Hello, class. Today I want to talk to you about logical fallacies and how you can apply them to the cause and effect essay. Okay, so this is a PowerPoint lecture that I've created and that I usually use in the classroom setting, but it needs some further explanation on some of these slides, so that's why I'm doing a voiceover to go along with it. Okay, so this is just an introduction to logical fallacies. So what is a logical fallacy, you may ask? Okay, a logical fallacy is really faulty reasoning or false logic. What it is it's something that might sound logical, but when in fact you look closer at what it is, it's not really a logical argument. You're using some sort of thing to kind of almost trick the other person. But being able to identify them really will help you to refute your opposition. And as it says here, redirect them to the truth. So it's really a matter of being able to identify them. Once you identify them, it is easier to, one, avoid using them in your own writing, and two, to be able to call out your opposition and be like, no, that's not right, and here's why it's not right. Okay, we see a lot of logical fallacies used in the media and especially in politics. Oh my word, I swear politicians are the kings of logical fallacies. This is just a little something that I had found at one point on, I think it was on Facebook, a friend of mine posted it, and this was back when the Ebola crisis was really kind of coming to a head here in the United States. We had our first case where they brought somebody over here so that they could be treated stateside, as well as there was the man in Texas who came down with Ebola. And at the time, if you think back, I mean, this was only about, was it a year, maybe a year ago? People were really stressing about this and unsure of how it could possibly spread or be contained within our country. This was something, so people were getting really upset with our government's response or lack of response in some people's opinions. So President Reagan, somebody posted this, a friend of mine who is a staunch supporter of President Obama. And so whether you are or are not a supporter of President Obama, this person certainly was. And he's one of those friends of mine, like from high school, who's like such a staunch supporter of the president that it doesn't matter what he does wrong, he will always support him. So, which I've never understood about any politician. There's never been anyone personally that I would say is always right, because nobody's always right. But anyway, so he posted this picture of President Reagan. It said, President Reagan ignored AIDS until 20,849 Americans had already died. But tell me again how Obama's immediate response to 3 Ebola cases has been inadequate. So on the surface, this seems to make sense because you look at it and you think, you know what, you're right, 20,000 Americans before he did anything versus 3 people here in the United States. Like, what's the big deal? Like, you can't even compare them. So clearly this one president, who is considered by most people to be one of our great presidents, this one president was certainly far more negligent than our current president is about this other thing. But here's where the false logic goes into all this. First of all, so you're telling me that maybe President Obama should wait until 20,000 Americans die and then do something about it? That would be okay? No, that's completely illogical. Obviously, if you were to ask President Reagan in hindsight, he probably would say that he should have acted earlier. People make mistakes, and clearly that was one of his mistakes. And secondly, one thing has nothing to do with the other. They're two completely different diseases. They're spread differently. The whole thing is different. So you really cannot compare the two. But people will try to take those two and throw that curveball in there to get you to come over to their side. Okay, so there's a few different fallacies that I want to talk about. One of them is the straw man. In the straw man argument, the speaker takes an argument, twists it, and then attacks the twisted argument. And it's illogical because it takes the argument out of context and avoids the issue on which the argument is founded. So my example is, in debater number 1 would say cultural diversity cannot be our highest value. We must have cultural unity first. Once we are united as a nation, then we can enjoy our diversities. And then debater number 2 says we can't get rid of cultural diversity. It's what makes America great. If we only have unity, we'll become the same and live in a communist nation. Okay, so where's the twist here? Where's the straw man? Where are they taking it and twisting it and then attacking the twisted argument? Well, right here. if you look at what the debater number one is saying, they're not saying that we can't have cultural diversity. They're saying that it shouldn't be our highest value. We have to have cultural unity first. Then once we're united as a nation, we can enjoy our diversities. And number two is now arguing, saying, well, we can't get rid of cultural diversity. It's what makes America great. They never said we shouldn't get rid of. Debater number one never said we should get rid of cultural diversity. They just said it shouldn't be our highest value. So their debater number one is proposing that we need to concentrate on this first thing before we can concentrate on this thing. And debater number two is completely ignoring that and just saying, oh, you clearly want to get rid of it. And if you get rid of that, then we're going to be communists. That's completely illogical. The two things don't make sense together. Okay, so you want to be careful to avoid that. Another example, again, of the straw man. After Will said that we should put more money into health and education, Warren responded by saying that he was surprised that Will hates our country so much he wants to leave it defenseless by cutting military spending. Okay, so the reason this is a straw man is, again, you take the argument and you twist the argument and then you attack that twisted argument. When Will said that we should put more money into health and education, he was saying we should put more money into health and education. He wasn't saying that we should cut our military spending. That's not what he was saying at all. Now, he doesn't say where we should get the money from, obviously, but that's not the point in this particular argument. He's saying that we should put more money into health and education. And rather than have the other person, Warren, respond to whether or not we should put more money into health and education, he completely ignores this statement and instead attacks this statement, which might get people up in arms thinking about cutting our, military spending and leaving our country defenseless. But this is not what the original person was saying. Warren takes Will's argument and twists it and then tries to propose that as the argument. You don't want to do that. Okay. Here's another one, begging the question, circular reasoning. So this is the idea, if A is true because B is true, and therefore B is true because A is true. So really what it is the person is justifying a cause because of the effect when the effect is the same as the cause. So here, let me give you an example of this. So the word of Zorbo the Great is flawless and perfect. Okay, so A is true, right? We know this because it says so in the great and infallible book of Zorbo's best and most truest things that are definitely true and should not ever be questioned. We know that A is true because B is true, and B is true because A is true. See how this keeps going around? How can you say that this is flawless and perfect because it says it here, and it says it here, so therefore this is true, and you just keep going around and around and around. You don't want to do that. Okay, here's another example. An arguer uses this argument in support of gun rights. So, our founding fathers were brilliant minds that crafted a perfect and unique document. Okay, true. Most people would say that that's a true statement. Everything they included in the original document should be left untouched because their original document was perfect and unique. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that, to move the screen. So, what they're saying here is, so our founding fathers were brilliant minds that crafted a perfect and unique document. So everything that they included should be left untouched because their original document was perfect and unique. So because their original document was perfect and unique, our founding fathers were brilliant minds that crafted a perfect and unique document. And you keep going around and around. But here's where this is a logical fallacy. Yes, our founding fathers were brilliant minds, and they definitely crafted a unique document, but some people might not say it was perfect, like maybe the slaves who were only considered 3/4 of a man. How about that? Or how about women who had no rights in our original Constitution? It wasn't until we created further amendments, the 19th, I believe, giving women the right to vote. There might have been a few issues with it. The reason our Constitution can be amended is because it might need to be changed. And so therefore, you can't say it was perfect and unique and that everything that included in the original document should be left untouched, because there are some things that we've had to touch and we've had to change, clearly. So you can't do this circular reasoning here. Okay. Next, the fallacy of composition. This comes from the speaker taking a fact about a part of something and applying it to the whole. So it means you take that one little piece and you apply it to everything. So men have jobs, therefore all jobs are filled by men. Well, clearly that's not true. Yes, men have jobs. That's obviously a true statement, but you can't take that one part and apply it to the whole, saying all jobs are filled by men, because, like, this is my job and I'm not a man. So I'm going to go with the fact that not all jobs are filled by men. Uh, so remember, what is true about a part is not necessarily true of the whole. Okay, and then you also have the fallacy of division, which is sort of the opposite. So it's where you impose the whole on the part. So when we had the fallacy of composition, you took the part men and applied it to the whole. Men have jobs, therefore all jobs are filled by men. Clearly not true. Here we have fallacy of division, where you impose the whole on the part. So the Langs are a nice family, therefore all of the Langs are nice. Well, clearly that may be true, but it's not necessarily true just because the first part is. So the Langs are a nice family. You can make that statement. That's the whole, okay? And now to impose it on the parts, all of the Langs are nice. Maybe they are. Maybe they are nice. But, maybe there's one person in the family that's not that nice. We all have that black sheep or whatever. Maybe there's one person who isn't. So you can't necessarily say that this, while a true statement, applies to all things individually. That might not actually work. All right, and then you have the ad hominem attacks. So the ad hominem attacks, it's Latin for attack on the man or against the person. And in this, the arguer attacks the person making the argument rather than the argument itself. We see this a lot in politics. Okay, so in the process, debater 1 makes a claim, debater 2 makes a personal attack on debater 1, therefore debater 1's argument is false. So I'm going to give you an example. No, I'm not going to give you that example. I thought that there was one on the next slide. So so the ad hominem attack. So debater 1 makes a claim. Let's say it's you have two people debating for, we'll say in the political forum, and one says that, we've had, these mass shootings that have been taking place across our country for years now, and we need stricter gun control laws in order to help prevent further attacks from happening in the future. And rather than having the second person attack that argument and say, making an argument that, it's not stricter gun control laws that we need. Maybe we just need to reinforce the gun control laws that do exist, or maybe what we need is better mental health care, or there could be a lot of other things that they could say to counter the first person's statement about needing stricter gun control laws to help prevent these mass shootings. So instead of doing that, this second person just attacks the first debater and says something like you're an idiot and you have no idea what kind of laws we need or don't need because you have very little experience with firearms. Well, that has nothing to do with it. You can't do that. You need to actually go back and counter the attack. And we've seen the ad hominem where you attack the person directly. We see that all the time in politics. We're getting ready to gear up for a new presidential season, and you will see it a lot. Pay attention to it, and you'll be shocked at how often you see it. Another ad hominem attack is called the you too attack. This attempts to justify a fault by accusing the opponent of the same thing. So this example is one we can certainly all relate to, whether we've been the parent or the child doing this. The parent asks the child to clean their room, and the child responds, "But you never clean your room." So the argument is wrong whether the opposition's made this same mistake or not. You can't necessarily say, just because the parent tells the child to clean their room, they're being the parent, they're telling the child to do something. It has no bearing on whether or not they ever clean their room, which is probably not a true statement anyway, but you know how we kind of get things, kids get things out of control. It doesn't matter. The parent's asking them to do something. One thing has nothing to do with the other. So it can be a very effective attack, but it's definitely still a logical fallacy. All right, then we also have the false cause. And in the false cause, many people confuse correlation, things that happen together or in a sequence, for causation. So and this is, again, with the cause and effect this is one that you really want to make sure you avoid in your writing. So many people confuse correlation, something that happens for causation. Sometimes correlation is coincidental, or it may be attributed to a common cause. So my example is pointing to this fancy chart. Roger shows how temperatures have been rising over the past few centuries, whilst at the same time the numbers of pirates have been decreasing. Thus, pirates cool the world, and global warming is a hoax. So you get what I'm saying here about, so just because you have these two things happening at the same, like within the same time frame, does not mean that there is causation. Just because temperatures have been rising and the number of pirates have been decreasing does not mean that the one thing has anything to do with the other. So you have to be careful about that. Okay, and then we have the genetic fallacy. Oh no, hold on here. The genetic fallacy. Something is judged as good or bad on the basis of where it comes from or from whom it came. So this fallacy avoids the argument by shifting the focus onto something or someone's origins. It's similar to an ad hominem fallacy in that it leverages existing negative perceptions to make someone's argument look bad without presenting a case for why the argument itself lacks merit. So I'm going to give you an example to drive this one home. Accused on the 6 o'clock news of corruption and taking bribes, the senator said that we should all be very wary of the things we hear in the media because we all know how very unreliable the media can be. Okay, so rather than him addressing the corruption and taking bribes and giving reasons why he hasn't done these things or whatever, instead of doing that, he's like, yeah, well, you know what? You can't believe the media because the media is very unreliable. Well, maybe the media can be very unreliable. That might be true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not corrupt and taking bribes. So you have to be careful of not just dismissing something because of where it came from. Again, we do see this a lot in politics with you have different politicians that will, or even just sources that will automatically dismiss something because of where it came from. Maybe with the different news sources. So we have like Fox News and MSNBC, which are probably the two polar opposites on the scale of on the scale of political leaning. How's that? Yeah, political leaning. That's the term that I'm looking for. So when you have MSNBC, which is very left-leaning, and Fox News, which is very right-leaning, a lot of times when one is reporting on something that the other has said, they tend to want to dismiss it just because it came from that opposite side. And that's not necessarily a reason enough to dismiss something. Just because Fox News, it's very conservative, is telling you something doesn't necessarily make it untrue. And the same is true from the other side. So you just have to be very careful about that. And then we have the slippery slope. Okay, so the slippery slope, domino effect. In this argument, one particular circumstance sets off a chain reaction that leads to a series of detrimental effects. The problem here, though, is that the result rests on the happening of several reactions, but there's no guarantee that the chain of reactions will occur. So let me give an example. Okay, if we do not value progress as the highest value, then no more discoveries will be made, our economy will collapse, people will no longer have jobs, and the human race will eventually cease to exist. This is an illogical chain of reasoning, because you can't just say that if we don't value progress as our highest value, then no more discoveries will be made. Really? None? No more discoveries will be made? And if no discoveries are made, then our entire economy will absolutely collapse. That's not necessarily going to happen next. And then people won't have jobs because our economy has collapsed. And then the human race will eventually cease to exist. That seems like a pretty steep slope that you've just run down there. So you need to be careful of that. But here's another one that we've actually seen frequently. If we allow same-sex couples to marry, then the next thing we know, we'll be allowing people to marry their parents, their cars, and even monkeys. We have to be careful of this one as well. This is just an example from what we see in society right now. Um, no matter how you feel about same-sex marriage, to use this slippery slope argument is really illogical, because just because we are allowing same-sex couples to marry does not necessarily mean that that the logical chain of events is that people will be able to marry their parents, their cars, children, animals, whatever. That's not necessarily going to happen. So you have to be careful about that. It's really just illogical. All right, so that's all I have to say on all of this with, oh, no, that's not what I meant to do. Logical fallacies. Hopefully it has all made sense to you, and I think that's about it. All right, I will be signing off here. All right, have a good one. Bye.